My daughter-in-law didn't just throw hot coffee at me, she threw away the last piece of respect she had in this family. And when she came back at 3 a.m. with a gift for me on the porch, I realized this wasn't about money or a card. It was about control, and that night, I finally took mine back. I was standing by the kitchen counter, enjoying the soft glow of the early morning sun, when everything I believed about my daughter-in-law shattered in an instant. I had just poured myself a cup of black tea, stirred in a little honey the way my late husband used to like it, and allowed myself a quiet moment of peace. At my age, peace becomes the rarest luxury of all. I certainly didn't expect her to break it. The front door swung open so violently that it hit the wall. Emily didn't knock. She never did anymore. She walked in with the confidence of someone who believed my home was just an extension of her own pockets. Her heels clicked like tiny hammers on my wooden floor, and she marched straight toward me as if she were confronting an employee who had forgotten a deadline. She didn't say, "Good morning," or "How are you?" She just glared at me with those cold, entitled eyes. "I need your card," she barked.
Just like that.
No explanation. No manners. No respect. I blinked at her, still holding my teaspoon, the warmth from the cup touching my fingertips. "Good morning to you too, Emily," I said softly. "And no, you cannot have it." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't change my tone. But those words, "you cannot have it," were like a lit match thrown into gasoline. She froze. Her eyes widened, not with surprise, but with offense. Like I had just committed an act of betrayal. Like I had broken some invisible contract she believed existed between us. And before I could say another word, before I could even set my cup down, she reached for the mug of steaming coffee she had brought with her, and she threw it. The liquid hit my chest, my shoulder, and part of my neck. It burned immediately. My breath caught in my throat, and my hand instinctively went to my skin. The pain shot through me like fire. The cup shattered on the floor. Drops of scalding coffee slid down my blouse, sinking into the fabric, into my skin, into my dignity. And Emily didn't apologize. She didn't gasp in panic. She didn't show a drop of remorse. She just stood there, shaking with rage, her chest heaving up and down, and hissed, "I said, I need your card." I stared at her, really stared, and in that moment, I finally saw the real Emily. The one behind the sugar-coated voice she used in public, the one behind the Instagram-perfect smile, the one who had fooled my sons so expertly. She wasn't stressed. She wasn't overwhelmed. She wasn't misunderstood. She was dangerous. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't defend myself. I simply whispered words she never expected. "You have no idea what you've just done." Her face twisted. "Don't talk to me like that. You owe us. You owe me." Maybe the burn on my skin hurt, but the burn inside my heart? That one hurt far more. Because at that moment, the woman who married my son, the woman who said she wanted a family, the woman I opened my home and heart to, looked at me like I was a burden. A wallet. A stepping stone she was tired of stepping on. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. I stood there in silence, holding my chest where the hot coffee burned me, and I made myself a promise. She will never hurt me like this again. And I meant every word. I spent a long moment frozen in that kitchen, listening to the echo of the door Emily had slammed. The house felt strangely hollow, as if her rage had sucked all the warmth out of the air. The smell of spilled coffee mixed with the faint scent of my honey tea. And there I stood, an old woman with coffee burning through her blouse, staring at the pieces of a mug that didn't break half as loudly as my patience. I touched the burn again, wincing at the sting. My skin was angry red, but it wasn't just the physical pain that made my hands tremble. It was the awakening. For years, I'd convinced myself that Emily was just having a rough time, still adjusting, or too stressed for her own good. I excused her moods, tolerated her sharp tongue, ignored her little cruelties. All for the sake of my son. All for the illusion of family harmony. But burns have a way of bringing clarity. I walked to the bathroom and gently ran cool water over my skin. Watching the red mark slowly deepen, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, no, that would have been simpler. What I felt was grief. Grief for the woman I used to be, before I let myself shrink. Grief for the years I spent silencing my own needs to avoid upsetting people who never cared if I was hurt. Grief for the mother who wanted so badly to see her son happy that she ignored alarm bells ringing loud as church bells. I wrapped a towel around my shoulder and caught my reflection in the mirror. My eyes looked older than usual, tired, worn, disappointed. But beneath the exhaustion, something else flickered. Resolve. I straightened my back. No more, I whispered. My voice didn't shake this time. I walked back into the kitchen and looked around. The broken cup on the floor. The coffee soaked into the rug. The silence. And for the first time in a long time, I realized this wasn't just a disrespectful outburst. This was a pattern. A pattern that only grew because I pretended not to see it. I cleaned the mess slowly, methodically. Each movement helped clear my mind. When I finished, I poured myself a new cup of tea, sat down at the table, and stared at the steam rising from it like a smoke signal announcing a battle. Emily thought she had control. She thought she could bully me, intimidate me, humiliate me, and walk away without consequences. She thought I was weak. She had mistaken my kindness for surrender. And in that quiet kitchen, nursing my burn and my pride, I realized something powerful. I wasn't the one who should be afraid. She was. Not because I would yell or fight or stoop to her level, but because I knew something she didn't. In this family, I held far more power than she ever suspected, and she had just awakened the wrong grandmother. I picked up my phone with steady hands. Not to call her, not to demand an apology, but to start a process she would never see coming. I sat at the kitchen table long after Emily left, holding my warm tea between my palms and trying to calm the pounding in my chest. As much as the burn on my shoulder throbbed, another pain, deeper, more complicated, pulsed beneath it. A mother's pain. The kind that whispers, "How did we get here? And how did my son not see any of it?" Daniel was always a gentle boy. Soft-spoken. Loyal. The kind of son who brought me flowers for no reason and still asked if I needed help carrying the groceries. When he married Emily, I prayed she would protect that kindness instead of taking advantage of it. But over the years, I watched him bend more and more, shrinking himself to fit the chaos she brought into the house. At first, I told myself it was normal. Couples fight, couples adjust. But then he started apologizing for things he didn't do. Laughing nervously whenever she snapped at him in front of others. Choosing silence over confrontation. I saw pieces of him peeling away little by little, like paint cracking on a wall that once stood proudly. And I hated myself for pretending not to notice. I heard his car pull into my driveway late that afternoon. The familiar hum of his engine always brought comfort, but today it made my stomach tighten. He walked in with that tired smile he used whenever he had been mediating one of Emily's storms. "Mom," he called out. "Emily told me you two had a disagreement." A disagreement. That's what she called throwing hot coffee on me. I watched him approach the table, his brow creased with worry. He sat across from me, studying my face like he could decipher the truth written in my wrinkles. I lifted my sleeve and pulled the fabric down just enough for him to see the red, blistering mark on my skin. The moment he saw it, his smile died. "Mom, what happened?" he whispered, his voice almost breaking. "She threw her coffee at me," I answered calmly. "Because I told her no." He inhaled sharply, leaning back in his chair as if the air had been knocked out of him. His eyes darted away, ashamed, confused, angry, all at the same time. For a moment, he didn't speak. He just clenched his fists on top of the table, his knuckles turning white. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he finally whispered. "She shouldn't have. This is not okay." I studied him, wondering if he truly understood the depth of what was happening around him. "Daniel," I said gently, "how long has she been using my card without telling you?" His face changed. Not shock, guilt. He swallowed hard, avoiding my eyes. I didn't know it was this much, he murmured. She always said it was for emergencies. That she asked you first. I trusted her. I thought, he rubbed his forehead, ashamed. And right there, I saw the truth. My son wasn't blind. He was exhausted. Trapped in a web of manipulation so well-woven, he didn't even realize he was caught. Daniel, I said softly, placing my hand over his, your kindness is not the problem. Her abuse of it is. His eyes filled with tears he tried to hide. I don't even recognize her anymore, he confessed. She gets angry so quickly, she spends money like it's a game, she lies about the smallest things. I just keep trying to make it work. I squeezed his hand. You don't fix a storm by standing still in the rain, son, I said. Sometimes the only way out is to move. He looked at me, then really looked, and for the first time, I saw fear mixed with relief. Like he had been waiting for someone to say out loud what his heart already knew. What are you going to do, Mom? He asked quietly. I took a deep breath, steady and controlled. I'm going to protect this family, I said. And I'm going to start by protecting myself. That night, long after my son left, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the coffee flying toward me again, that moment frozen in time like a photograph burned into my memory. But it wasn't the pain that kept me awake. It was the truth finally settling in my bones. Emily wasn't spiraling. She wasn't overwhelmed. She wasn't losing control. She had been in control all along. Of my son. Of the money. Of the narrative. Of everything she could twist in her favor. And I had let her. When dawn finally broke, I got dressed slowly, choosing the same navy blue blouse I wore the day I signed the papers to help Daniel buy his first home. It reminded me of something important, that I wasn't helpless. Not then. Not now. I grabbed my purse and stepped into the cool morning air with one goal, to see the truth written in black and white. When I walked into the bank, the manager, Mr. Collins, stood up with a warm smile. Mrs. Thompson, it's been a while. Yes, I replied softly, and I need your help today. I sat down across from him, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly above us. He folded his hands and listened attentively as I explained that I wanted printed statements of every transaction made with my card over the last year. All of them, he asked, a slight frown forming. Yes, I said. Every swipe. Every tap. Every online purchase. When he returned with a stack of papers, thick as a book, I felt my breath hitch. I wasn't prepared for the sheer volume of it. As he placed the pile in front of me, a single thought crossed my mind. This is more than misuse. This is betrayal. I started going through the pages slowly. High-end boutiques I'd never stepped into, spa packages every other week, DoorDash orders of food I'd never eaten, hotel reservations in cities I hadn't visited, rideshare trips from places she told my son she'd never been near. Each line was a lie laid bare. Each amount was a piece of trust shattered. I felt my throat tighten. Mrs. Thompson, are these charges unauthorized? He asked gently. I looked at him and I didn't lie. They were made by someone I trusted. His expression softened with understanding. Without judgment, he gave me options. Freeze the card, issue a new one, add extra security layers, request physical copies of statements, and even access camera footage from ATM use. I accepted everything. And when he finally handed me an envelope thick with evidence, stamped, signed, and official, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not revenge. Something far stronger. Agency. As I left the bank, a gust of wind brushed past me, almost as if the world itself was exhaling with me. For the first time in years, I felt like I was no longer playing defense. I was finally stepping onto the field. Walking back to my car, I tightened my grip on the envelope. Emily had thrown hot coffee at me and believed the moment would evaporate between us like steam. But she didn't realize what she had truly awakened. I wasn't just a mother. I wasn't just a grandmother. I wasn't just an old woman with a quiet voice. I was the woman who held the documents that could unravel her entire castle of lies. And for the first time since the burn touched my skin, I felt powerful. When I arrived back home, the envelope from the bank felt heavier than it should. Not because of the paper, but because of what it represented, the truth I had avoided for far too long. I placed it gently on the dining table, careful not to wrinkle the edges, and stood there for a moment, staring at it like it was a sleeping beast I had to learn how to handle. My father used to say, when you're stepping into a storm, bring someone who knows the direction of the wind. So I picked up the phone, and I called Mr. Harris. He had been my lawyer for years, a quiet, patient man with silver hair and a way of speaking that made you feel like the world wasn't ending even when it was. He didn't ask unnecessary questions over the phone. He simply said, "I'll be there in 1 hour," and hung up. Exactly 58 minutes later, he knocked on my door. As soon as he walked in and saw the burn on my arm, his expression changed, subtle, but enough for me to notice. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't confused. He was disappointed. Not in me, in the situation, in the people who put me in it. "I assume," he said gently, "this is connected to what we'll be discussing today." I nodded and handed him the envelope. He sat down at the table, opened it, and began reviewing the documents with the precision of a surgeon. Every page he turned made his jaw tighten a little more. When he finally exhaled, it was the long, heavy kind of breath people release when they've reached the conclusion they hoped they wouldn't. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, folding his hands over the stack of papers, "this is substantial financial abuse." The room felt cold. I swallowed. "I figured as much." He continued, "This is not occasional misuse. This is systematic, repeated, intentional. She clearly believed she had unrestricted access to your resources." I leaned back in my chair, the truth settling like a weight on my chest. "She threw hot coffee at me because I said no." He paused, not out of shock, but as if he was connecting that behavior to the pattern on the table. "That aligns," he said. "Abusers escalate when their control is threatened." Those words hit me harder than the coffee. Abusers. Escalate. Control. I felt my hand tremble on the table, and he placed his own over it. Steady, reassuring. "You're not alone in this, Mrs. Thompson. And you're not powerless." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a few documents. Deeds. Contracts. Agreements. Papers I had signed over the years and forgotten existed because of how much trust one placed in my son and his marriage. And then he said something that changed everything. "You own more than you remember." He slid the first document to me, the deed of my late husband's company, still legally under my name. Then another, the loan documents for Daniel's car. Another, the registration of the small business Emily convinced him to open. The more he showed me, the clearer the picture became. Emily wasn't living in a world of her own making. She was living in a world I built. And she had been burning bridges she didn't even know were hers to lose. Mr. Harris rested his hands calmly on the table. "You have several legal paths," he explained. "Financial restitution, removal of her access to shared accounts, protection orders if needed. And if it comes to it, you have the power to protect your son from the financial consequences of her behavior." I took a slow breath. The kind a woman takes when she finally decides she will no longer carry guilt for someone else's chaos. "What do you recommend?" I asked. He didn't hesitate. "I recommend clarity," he said. "Clarity, boundaries, and truth. Once Daniel sees the full picture, things will change. Maybe slowly, maybe painfully, but they will change." I glanced at the envelope again. "I want to confront her," I murmured. He nodded once. "Then let me help you do it the right way." In that moment, something shifted inside me, a mixture of courage, grief, and something dangerously close to hope. Because for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't standing in the fire alone. The day after I met with Mr. Harris, the house felt different. Not quieter. It had always been quiet, but charged. Like the air before a thunderstorm. I moved through the room slowly, touching the furniture, adjusting picture frames, opening windows just to let in fresh air. It wasn't cleaning. It was preparing. Preparing for truth. Preparing for consequences. Preparing for the moment Emily's world would finally collide with reality. As I polished the dining table, I realized something important. The confrontation wasn't just about what she did to me. It was about what she had done to this family. 1 year of unauthorized purchases. 1 year of controlling my son with guilt and manipulation. 1 year of lies. The burn on my shoulder still ached, but it no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a warning. That afternoon, I called Daniel. I kept my voice calm, steady, even warm. Could you and Emily come by for dinner tomorrow? There was a pause. A long one. Is everything okay, Mom? He asked gently. Yes, I said. Everything will be. He didn't push for details. He never did. That was one of Daniel's greatest strengths and greatest flaws. He trusted people too easily. And he feared conflict more than anything. After I hung up, I went to the closet and pulled out the good tablecloth, the white one with lace edges, the one I only used on holidays or important discussions. I ironed it carefully, set it on the table, chose matching plates, polished wine glasses, placed 2 candles in the center. I wasn't preparing a dinner. I was preparing a courtroom, disguised as warmth. I cooked Daniel's favorite casserole, the one with rosemary and garlic, the one he loved since childhood. I wanted him grounded, reminded of who he was before Emily's influence twisted his sense of normalcy. Every detail mattered. As I worked, memories drifted in. Daniel as a little boy, running through the backyard with muddy shoes the day he first brought Emily home, nervous but proud, her bright smile and sugar-coated charm, my foolish hope that she would be good for him. Hope can be dangerous. It blinds you until truth burns itself into your skin. That evening, I sat alone in the living room with a cup of chamomile tea. The house was dim, the lights soft. I looked around and realized something I didn't expect. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of her. Not of the confrontation. Not of the consequences. For the first time in a long time, I felt solid. Like the woman I used to be when my husband was alive, when I ran our small store, when I handled accounts and negotiations with confidence. Emily had made me forget that part of myself. The part that wasn't fragile, wasn't silent, wasn't small. And tomorrow, she would meet that woman for the first time. Before going to bed, I placed the envelope from the bank in a drawer near the dining table. Not hidden, just waiting. Just like me. I lay down and stared at the ceiling. Thoughts came and went, swirling like restless birds. Would Emily explode? Would Daniel finally see the truth? Would everything change after tomorrow? Probably. But nothing could make things worse than the moment she threw hot coffee at me and looked at me like I was nothing. For the first time, I whispered a sentence to myself, one that wrapped around my heart like armor. Respect comes from truth. And tomorrow she will face it. And with that, I finally slept. The next day moved slowly, like the world itself was aware that something was about to break. I woke up early, made coffee for myself this time, and let the aroma fill the house. As the sunlight crept across the living room floor, I found myself rehearsing the words I would say and the ones I wouldn't. Because this dinner wasn't about shouting. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was about truth. And truth, when spoken calmly, is more devastating than anger. I spent the afternoon adding the final touches to the table. Silverware perfectly aligned. Napkins folded with care. The casserole warming in the oven. Its smell nostalgic and comforting. The smell of a home that used to be peaceful. At around 6 o'clock, I lit the candles. The soft glow transformed the dining room into something almost sacred. A space for revelation. For accountability. For clarity that my son had been denied for far too long. I placed a small bowl of flowers, fresh, simple, white, in the center of the table. Symbolic, maybe. A reminder that purity doesn't fear exposure. By the time the doorbell rang, my heart was steady. Not racing. Not trembling. Steady, like a drum preparing for a ceremony. Daniel stood at the door with a hesitant smile. His shoulders looked heavier than usual, as if he carried a truth inside him he wasn't ready to face. Emily, as always, entered first. Shoulders high, chin lifted, a designer purse dangling from her arm, one that I now knew had been paid with my card. "Wow," she said, scanning the table with an amused smirk. "Someone went all out. What's the occasion? Thanksgiving in the middle of the year?" She laughed at her own joke. I just smiled. Please sit. Emily plopped into her chair, tapping her nails against her phone as if this dinner was nothing more than an inconvenience. Daniel hesitated, glancing at me with a quiet question in his eyes. Everything okay, Mom? He whispered. Yes, I said. Everything is exactly as it needs to be. We began eating. The casserole was warm, and Daniel closed his eyes briefly after the first bite, memories of safer times washing over him. Emily barely touched her plate. So, she said, setting her fork down loudly, can we talk about why we're really here? I know you didn't invite us for a casserole. Her tone was a spark, but instead of igniting anger, it lit clarity inside me. Of course, I said calmly. Let's talk. Emily leaned back, crossing her arms. Good. Because I want to address how you've been treating me lately. I told Daniel how hostile you were yesterday and… Hostile. I repeated softly. Daniel's eyes darted between us, confused. Yes, Emily snapped. You refused to help us with your card. Again. You know we're struggling. You know. I interrupted her gently. Emily, did you tell Daniel what else happened yesterday? Her jaw tightened. Her eyes flashed. But she didn't answer. Mom? Daniel asked carefully. What else? I pulled my sleeve back, revealing the burn on my arm, still red, still tender. The candlelight made it even more pronounced. Daniel's fork clattered against his plate. What, how, Mom? What happened? I didn't take my eyes off Emily. She threw hot coffee at me, I said calmly. Emily's face drained of color. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her confidence cracked, just a hairline fracture, but visible enough. She stammered. It wasn't like that. It was an accident. I leaned forward slightly. You called it an accident. Yet you walked out without checking if I was okay. Daniel looked at her, horror slowly dawning on his face. Emily, you threw coffee at my mother? She straightened her back, putting her mask on again. She's twisting it. The cup slipped. Why would I intentionally do that? She's always emotional. That's enough, I said softly, but there was steel beneath the words. Emily froze. Daniel stared at me, barely breathing. I reached under the table, not quickly, not dramatically, and placed the envelope from the bank in the center of the table like a judge presenting evidence. What is that? Emily asked, her voice cracking at the edges. The truth, I replied. And tonight, we're all going to look at it together. The candle flames flickered. Dinner was over. Court had begun. Emily stared at the envelope like it was a venomous snake coiled on the table, ready to strike. Her fingers tightened around her phone, knuckles turning pale. For the first time since she entered my house, the usual arrogance in her eyes flickered, replaced, just briefly, by something closer to fear. Daniel swallowed hard. Mom, what is this? I kept my voice calm, steady, almost gentle. Something your wife didn't tell you. Emily forced a laugh, strained, artificial. Oh, come on. This is ridiculous. She's making it dramatic. There's nothing in that envelope. She's just trying to manipulate you. Her voice trembled on the last word. Daniel looked at her more closely now, searching her face the way a man searches the horizon for a storm he prayed wasn't coming. I opened the envelope slowly, sliding out the stack of printed bank statements. The sound of paper against paper echoed in the silent room, louder than a shout. I placed the first page in front of Daniel. His eyes scanned it, confusion clouding his features. Daniel, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Every transaction made with my card this year is on these pages. Emily shot up from her chair. Don't look at those. But Daniel grabbed the page before she could snatch it away. His eyes widened. His breath hitched. His shoulders stiffened. Emily, Sephora? Twice in 1 week, he muttered. She forced a laugh. Oh, that? I told you I picked up a gift for my sister. And this, he said, flipping the page. Designer shoes? $300. I needed them for work. You know how my boss is. He flipped another page. Hotel reservations? His voice cracked. Emily, where were you that weekend? She blinked rapidly, trying to retrieve the script she had rehearsed so many times. It's not, Daniel, listen. Your mother is twisting everything. She's showing you random things to make me look bad. You know how she is. I looked at Daniel, really looked, and watched the moment when doubt cracked open inside him. He wasn't angry yet. Not fully. Not at her. He was simply waking up. A painful awakening, like stepping outside after years in a dark room and being blinded by sunlight. Emily, he said quietly, you told me we were behind on bills because of the bank error. It was, she insisted. I mean, it seemed like it was, I thought. Her words fell apart like wet tissue. I slid another page toward him. Uber rides at midnight. From neighborhoods she claimed she'd never stepped foot in. Spa treatments billed during work hours. Restaurant tabs for 2, not 1. And then the charge that made him freeze. $8.74 at a jewelry store? He whispered. Emily's jaw clenched. That wasn't. I didn't. That must be hers.
She pointed at me.
She's been buying things and blaming me. I raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Daniel looked between us, his breathing shallow. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I didn't even look angry. I simply placed my last piece of evidence on the table. Security footage from the ATM, printed still images with timestamps. Emily withdrawing money. Emily using my card. Emily looking directly into the camera. Daniel stared at the pictures, his heart visibly breaking.
Once. Twice.
3 times. Emily, he whispered. You lied to me. Her mask cracked. Fully this time. She slammed her hands on the table. So what? She screamed. Daniel flinched. I didn't move. She immediately tried to recover, smoothing her hair, wiping her tears, changing her expression like an actress switching roles. You don't understand, she said, voice trembling now. I did it for us. For our life. For the future. Your mom, she has everything and we have nothing. She could help but she won't. She's selfish. I exhaled slowly. Selfish. A word I had swallowed for decades to keep peace. Daniel looked at her, eyes full of pain, and something else. Recognition. The recognition of the truth he had been avoiding. Emily, he said softly, you threw hot coffee at my mother. She froze. I didn't, she provoked me. It was an accident. Her excuses crumbled. Because no lie can stand upright when surrounded by truth on all sides. The room went silent. Only the candles flickered. And I finally understood something. Emily wasn't afraid of what she had done. She was afraid of losing the control she'd built around my son. And tonight, she had her first taste of what it felt like when that control slipped. The room felt smaller the moment Emily fell silent. The candles flickered against the walls, making shadows dance behind her. Shadows that looked far more honest than the excuses she was struggling to form. Daniel sat completely still, his fingers gripping the edge of the table so tightly that his knuckles turned white. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Not because there was nothing to say, but because everything had already been said, just not out loud. I slid my sleeve back once more, exposing the burn on my arm under the soft glow of candlelight. It had darkened overnight, the edges slightly swollen. An ugly mark, but at least a truthful one. Daniel stared at it, his expression twisting into something heavy. Regret, shame, disbelief, heartbreak. Emily, he whispered. You did this to her. Emily's breath hitched. Her hands trembled. But she still tried to resurrect her lie. It was an accident, she insisted. She moved wrong.
She startled me.
The cup slipped. Why is everyone acting like I'm a monster? I kept my voice steady. Because monsters do not need claws or fangs, Emily. Sometimes they only need entitlement. Her eyes widened, insulted, terrified, exposed. Daniel rubbed his forehead as he stood up abruptly, stepping away from the table like he needed air. He pressed his palms against the wall and kept his head down. His shoulders rose and fell with uneven breaths, the kind a person takes when the world they built collapses under their feet. Daniel, I said softly, look at me.
He did.
When she threw that coffee, She didn't apologize. She didn't check if I was hurt. She didn't flinch. She only asked for my card again. His face paled. That was the moment he understood the truth. Accidents don't demand access to someone's money. Control does. Emily swallowed hard. You're twisting everything, both of you. I've been stressed, pressured, dealing with so much. I needed help. Daniel turned to her slowly. Then why didn't you tell me? Why lie? Why hide? Why spend behind my back? Why scream at me when I asked about our bills? Why? Because you never listen, she screamed back. Her voice echoed through the house, bouncing off the walls. Daniel recoiled like she had struck him. And then she said something she never meant to say out loud. I needed control somehow, okay? You don't give me any. Your mother has everything, influence, money, authority, and I have nothing. Her voice broke. The facade shattered. There it was. Not remorse. Not guilt. Not love. But resentment. Deep, festering resentment toward me and toward Daniel. You think I like depending on you? She spat. You think I enjoy worrying about money? You think I don't deserve more? Her face twisted, anger and desperation tangled in the same breath. I folded my hands calmly. You didn't want help, I said. You wanted power. Emily froze. Daniel stared at her, his eyes hollowing out. Is that true? He whispered. She didn't answer. Her silence was louder than any confession. I exhaled slowly and added, Power built on lies always burns the hands of the one who holds it. Emily's lips parted, but no words came out. For the first time, she didn't know which version of herself to perform. She stood there, caught between the person she wanted to appear to be and the person she had actually become. Daniel stepped closer to the table, his voice trembling. I trusted you, Emily. I defended you. I believed in you. She looked down, unable to meet his eyes. And this, he said, tapping the bank statements, the ATM photos, the envelope, this is what you did with that trust? Her silence was her answer. Daniel sank into his chair, the weight of betrayal pressing him down like a stone. And Emily, she finally understood something that had never occurred to her before. Truth doesn't need volume. It needs evidence. And tonight, the evidence was suffocating her. Daniel sat motionless, staring at the documents as if each line of ink were a blade pressed against his chest. The silence in the room felt heavy, like a thick fog settling over our dinner table, suffocating, cold, unavoidable. Emily shifted in her chair, panic flickering across her face in rapid pulses, like a candle flame fighting for oxygen. She reached out and tried to grab the papers. I placed my hand over them first.
Calm. Steady.
Firm. Don't, I said quietly. My voice didn't need to rise. It didn't need force. It only needed truth. And tonight, truth was louder than any scream. Daniel slowly slid another page toward himself, his hands shaking as he read. Emily, he whispered. Uber rides at midnight? From a bar? On a Tuesday? She opened her mouth, but all that came out was, I wasn't drinking. I was meeting someone for... She cut herself off too late. His eyes narrowed. For what? Emily's throat bobbed in a tight swallow. I didn't speak. I didn't push. I let the silence press her from all sides, and silence, when used well, is the most honest interrogator. Daniel flipped to another page. Spas to restaurants, boutiques. Emily, these charges are constant. Weekly. Sometimes daily. The word daily hit her like a blow. She threw her hair back and forced a laugh as brittle as glass. Okay, fine. I bought things. I treated myself. But so what? You always said you wanted me to feel comfortable. I said I wanted you to feel cared for, Daniel murmured. Not entitled. Emily scoffed. Oh, please. Your mother has everything. I thought she would notice a few small charges. Daniel slammed his hand on the table. The candles trembled. A few small charges? He shouted. Emily, this is thousands of dollars. She flinched, shrinking for the first time in the entire evening. I pushed another page toward Daniel, this one with highlighted transactions. The hotel, the jewelry, The fancy dinners. The rideshare trips from places she insisted she had never been. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper, trembling, fragile as wet paper. You told me you were at your sister's that weekend. Emily's breath hitched. I was.
Then
why, he said, sliding the paper to her, his voice finally breaking, were you checking into a hotel 40 minutes away? Her face drained of blood. Her fingers shook. Her lips parted, searching for a lie that wouldn't come. I watched her unravel inch by inch.
It wasn't satisfying.
It wasn't triumphant. It was tragic, the kind of unraveling only lies can produce when the foundation collapses beneath them. Emily pushed her chair back suddenly, standing so fast she knocked into the table. The candles flickered. The napkins shifted. Her breath came out in sharp gasps. This is insane, she shouted. You're being manipulated. Your mother has always hated me. She's doing this to break us apart. Daniel shook his head slowly. No, Emily. My mother didn't spend this money. You did. She's lying. The bank statements aren't, I said quietly. Emily's eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal searching for an exit. But the only thing surrounding her was truth. And truth has no door. Daniel looked back at the pages, at the numbers, the dates, the charges that painted a story far clearer than any excuse Emily could invent. Emily, he whispered, voice weary and devastated. How long has this been going on? She didn't answer. She couldn't, because the timeline was written in her own purchases, and every page turned was a confession she had never meant to give. Daniel placed the papers down gently, like they were shards of something precious and broken. When he looked at his wife again, it wasn't with anger. It was with something far worse. Recognition. He finally saw her. Not the version she performed. Not the mask she wore in public. Not the sweet voice she used around others. He saw the real Emily. The one who hid behind lies, manipulation, and entitlement. And once a man sees the truth, he can never unsee it. Emily's breathing grew erratic, fast and shallow. The way someone breathes when they feel cornered but still convinced they can claw their way out. She wiped her palms on her jeans, eyes darting between me and Daniel like she was calculating escape routes in her mind. She didn't know there were none left. Daniel picked up the stack again, flipping through page after page as though searching for something, anything, to contradict what he saw. But all the evidence pointed in one direction, and that direction had Emily's signature all over it. How could you hide this from me? He whispered. Emily's eyes snapped toward him, desperate. I didn't hide anything. I didn't want to worry you. You were stressed, work was terrible, and... Daniel slammed the papers down, voice cracking. So you stole instead? She winced, like the word physically hit her. I didn't steal from anyone, she spat. Your mother never even used her card. She didn't need the money. What difference did it make to her? Her face contorted into something cruel, something raw that she didn't mean to reveal. I leaned back slightly, studying her. She wasn't just justifying her actions. She was confessing her mindset. If someone has more than me, I have a right to take it. That was the belief that had driven her all along. Daniel dragged a hand down his face, exhausted. Emily, this is not about money anymore. Oh, really? She snapped. Then what is it about? Your mother trying to control us. I folded my hands calmly on the table, and that, for some reason, unsettled her more than any raised voice could. It's about truth, I said softly. A truth that doesn't come from my mouth or yours. Before she could respond, I reached into the envelope and slid out 3 printed photos, the ones with timestamps. ATM security footage. I placed them gently on the table, face up. Emily froze. Daniel leaned in, his breath leaving his chest in a harsh exhale. There she was, in full clarity, captured by the ATM camera. Emily holding my card. Emily looking around nervously. Emily withdrawing cash. The date, 2 days before her work seminar. The time, 11:42 p.m.
Real.
Undeniable. Irrefutable. Emily's lips parted, trembling. These aren't real. They're edited. She must have. Daniel cut her off sharply, for the first time in their marriage. Stop. The words sliced through the air. Emily swallowed hard, her throat bobbing. Her hands trembled violently now. That's not me, she whispered. Anyone can look like that. Emily, Daniel said, lifting the paper slightly. This photo shows you wearing the same jacket you're wearing right now. She looked down at her reddish-brown leather jacket, the one she bragged about buying on sale. It was the exact same one in the footage. Her face drained of color. Daniel's voice broke. Why did you lie to me? Why did you use her card? Why did you pretend nothing happened? Emily's breath came out in fragmented syllables. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted something for myself. You don't understand. She made me feel unwanted. I was stressed. I didn't know what else to do. Excuses, half-formed and tangled together like threads of a web she had spun too tightly. I didn't interrupt. Daniel didn't interrupt. Because sometimes the worst punishment is letting someone hear the sound of their own lies. Emily's voice cracked. I was going to fix it. I was going to pay it back. I just needed time. Daniel shook his head slowly, eyes full of heartbreak. But instead of asking for help, you stole. And instead of apologizing, you threw hot coffee at my mother. Emily's eyes went wide with panic. I said it was an accident. I lifted my sleeve again. Daniel whispered, That's not what an accident looks like. The room went silent. For the first time since we sat down for dinner, Emily realized something. The lies she had built her world upon had finally run out of places to hide. Emily stood there trembling, not from remorse, but from panic, the kind of panic that only visits those who spent too long believing they were untouchable. She looked at Daniel, then at me, then at the evidence spread across the table like a mosaic of her own destruction. And suddenly, her face shifted. Her back straightened. Her eyes narrowed. Her breathing slowed to a rehearsed rhythm. She was switching strategies. It was the same transformation I'd seen before, usually right before she twisted a situation in her favor. But never had I seen it so desperate, so unpolished, so frantic. She placed a hand over her chest dramatically. Daniel, sweetheart, you're really going to believe this? Her voice softened, dripping with artificial sweetness. After everything we've been through? Daniel blinked, startled, confused, but he didn't move toward her. Emily stepped around the table, slowly, carefully, like she was approaching a wounded animal. But the only wounded person in the room was the one she created. We've had a rough year, she whispered, placing her hand on his arm. We've both been stressed. We've both made mistakes. Daniel pulled his arm back. I didn't steal from my mother, he said quietly. Emily's expression cracked. Just a little. Just for a second. Then she forced a smile again. That word is so ugly, she murmured. I didn't steal. I borrowed. You know I was going to fix everything. Daniel looked at her as though seeing a stranger. Emily, you didn't borrow anything. You took money from someone who didn't agree to give it. That is stealing. Her lips tightened. Her eyes flashed. And then, the most predictable step in her arsenal. She began to cry. But not the sobs of someone remorseful. Not the tears of someone ashamed. They were the loud, dramatic, performative tears of someone who thought crying could rewrite reality. She fell to her knees dramatically, grabbing Daniel's hands. Don't let her ruin us, she cried. Your mother has always hated me. She wants to break our marriage. She wants you all to herself. Daniel's voice rose sharply, something I'd never heard from him before. This isn't about my mother, he snapped. It's about what you did. Emily froze, tears still on her face, but her expression twisting into something harder. I had seen this moment coming, the moment when crying fails and anger comes to take its place. She stood abruptly, wiping her cheeks aggressively. You know what? She spat.
Fine. Fine.
If you two want to team up against me, go ahead. But don't act like either of you is perfect. I tilted my head slightly. This isn't about perfection. It's about accountability. Emily's eyes darted toward me, hateful, sharp. Oh, shut up, she hissed. You've always wanted to control him. You think just because you're old and play the saint that you can walk around judging everyone. My son's face turned red. Not from embarrassment, but from shame at the woman he had chosen. Emily, stop talking to her like that. Oh, so now you defend her? Emily screamed. The woman who has made my life miserable since the day I walked into this house? I raised one eyebrow. Emily, the only person who made your life miserable was you. She spun toward me. Don't talk to me like that. Why? I asked calmly. Because I finally stopped letting you disrespect me? She opened her mouth, but no words came. For the first time, she was standing in a room where manipulation didn't work, tears didn't work, anger didn't work, and lies had reached their expiration date. She was naked in the one way she never expected, exposed. She pointed a shaking finger at Daniel. Choose, she whispered.
Right now.
Choose between her or me. Daniel looked at her, truly looked, and something broke inside him. Not love, not anger, not even loyalty, but illusion. He shook his head slowly. I'm not choosing between anyone, he said. You already made the choice for both of us the moment you lied and hurt my mother. Emily's mouth fell open. Daniel whispered, hollow and pained. I just didn't see it until tonight. And that was the moment Emily understood something she had never believed possible. She no longer had control. Not over the money. Not over the story.
Not over me.
And worst of all, not over my son. For a moment, everything went silent, painfully, unnervingly silent. The kind of silence that happens right after a glass shatters, when everyone is too stunned to move, too overwhelmed to speak. Emily stood frozen, her chest rising and falling in frantic rhythm, staring at Daniel as if she could magically force him back into the version of himself she controlled. But that version was gone.
She saw it. I saw it. He saw it.
And that realization made her unravel even faster. No, she whispered, shaking her head violently. No, 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 you're not doing this. You're not turning on me like she wants. This is exactly what she planned. She pointed at me, her finger trembling. She manipulated you. This is all her fault. Daniel didn't even turn toward me. He didn't need to. For the first time, he wasn't looking for who to believe. He was seeing what had been in front of him all along. Emily, stop blaming her, he said softly. This isn't about my mother. This is about you lying to me. Another crack appeared in Emily's composure. Her hands fumbled at her sides, gripping and ungripping her clothes like she needed to hold onto something solid. But the only thing left in front of her was truth, and she'd never learned how to grab hold of that. She stepped closer to him. You can't do this to me, she said, her voice suddenly small, almost childlike. You can't just throw our marriage away. I'm your wife. Daniel's eyes softened, but only with sadness, not forgiveness. You're my wife, he said quietly, but you haven't acted like a partner in a long time. She let out a choked breath. What is that supposed to mean? That you stop being honest with me, he answered. That you stop talking to me. That every time something went wrong, you lied, hid, or blamed someone else. Mostly my mother. Emily's eyes glistened with tears again, but these weren't manipulative tears. These were the tears of someone realizing the story they controlled was no longer under their pen. She looked at me then, a look not of anger, but of raw, honest fear. You want him to leave me, she whispered. I shook my head.
No.
I want him to see you clearly. She recoiled as if the words had slapped her. That's cruel, she muttered, trembling. It's the truth, I said. Emily turned back to Daniel, desperate now. I can change, she said quickly. I swear. I can fix this. We can fix this. I'll pay her back. I'll delete the card. I'll go to therapy. Just don't give up on me. Daniel closed his eyes. The kind of close that lasts long enough to hold back tears. I don't want you to change for a week and then go back, he said. I want a marriage built on honesty, not fear, not manipulation, not secrets. Emily shook her head vigorously. I'm not manipulating you. I'm trying to survive. You have no idea how hard it is to feel less than, to feel like everyone around you is better, to feel like you're failing. And stealing solved that, he interrupted softly. She stopped talking, because there was no answer to that. Daniel walked toward the living room, his back heavy, his steps slow. Emily followed him, reaching out, but he stepped away. Daniel, please. But he wasn't listening anymore. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't calling names. And that hurt her more than anything. Because when a gentle man stops fighting, it means he's already letting go. Emily turned back to me, and suddenly her fear changed. Her eyes narrowed. Her lips pressed together. Her shoulders stiffened. It wasn't fear of losing money anymore, or losing the argument, or losing control. It was fear of losing Daniel. She looked at me with a mixture of hatred and desperation, a dangerous combination. "You're doing this," she whispered hoarsely. "You're taking him from me." I met her gaze calmly. "No," I said softly. "You pushed him away. I'm just showing him the light you kept turning off." Something inside her snapped, not loudly, not visibly, but in a way I felt more than saw. And I knew, without a doubt, that the storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. After that moment, after Daniel walked away and Emily's last layer of control cracked, the air inside the house changed. It wasn't tense anymore. It wasn't angry. It felt dangerous. Like we were standing too close to the edge of something sharp. Emily's breathing was uneven, broken into small gasps, but not because she was crying. Because she was thinking, calculating, turning gears in her mind, searching for a way to twist the situation into something she could still control. She wasn't the type to accept defeat, not even when defeat reflected itself back at her in printed receipts, ATM photos, and a burn on my skin. She paced back and forth in the dining room, running her hands through her hair like she was rewinding the day and trying to rewrite the script. I watched her silently. I'd seen this before, not in her, but in people who grew up believing that manipulation was survival. They didn't just lie. They reinvented reality each time they opened their mouth. She suddenly turned toward me. Her eyes were wild, her voice lower, more deliberate. "You think you're so righteous," she said, "sitting there with your little stack of papers, acting like you're some moral authority. But you're not." I didn't answer. Her words weren't meant for truth. They were meant for intimidation. "You think he'll stay with you?" she continued. "You think he'll take your side forever? He won't. Men always go back to their wives." She stepped closer. "You're old," she whispered. "You're alone. You're clinging to him because he's the only thing you have left." Her words didn't hurt me, but they revealed her. I spoke calmly. "I'm not clinging to him. I'm protecting him." Emily scoffed. "Protecting? From what?" "From a wife who wants a better life. From someone who actually wants to build something." "You didn't build anything," I replied. "You took." She flinched, not physically, but emotionally, because she knew it was true. Her voice sharpened. "I'm not the villain here. You are." I tilted my head slightly. "Then why do you look like someone searching for a way out?" She didn't answer. Because she knew I was right. Emily suddenly grabbed her purse from the chair, her movements frantic, messy, driven by panic instead of logic. "You two think you can gang up on me?" she said.
Fine.
"I don't need this. I don't need either of you." Daniel stepped back into the room just in time to hear her final declaration. "You're leaving?" he asked, stunned. She looked at him, eyes blazing. "Maybe I should. Maybe both of you deserve to be alone." Daniel's voice cracked. "Emily, that's not what I want." "No," she interrupted sharply. "You've made it clear what you want. You want her." She pointed at me like I was the root of every misery she had ever experienced. I remained silent, not because I was intimidated, but because she was exposing herself with every sentence. Emily lifted her chin. "I'm going for a drive," she said coldly. "You can both stay here and celebrate ruining my life." Daniel tried to reach her. "Emily, please." She yanked her arm away. "Don't touch me." And just like that, she stormed out. The door slammed behind her with the force of a gunshot. Daniel froze. I watched the doorknob tremble. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. He turned to me, eyes hollowed. "What do I do, Mom?" he whispered. I stepped closer and laid a hand on his arm, a gesture I hadn't done in years, one we both needed. You do nothing for now, I answered. Let her show you who she is. He swallowed hard, his throat tightening. And what if she doesn't come back? I took a breath. Then you finally know. The house felt heavier, quieter, too still. Daniel sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. And as I stood there watching him, watching the cracks in his world deepen, I realized something. Tonight wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of everything. Because Emily wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Women like her didn't leave quietly. They returned with storms. And deep down, I knew the next one was already forming. Daniel and I sat in the dimly lit dining room long after Emily slammed the door. The candles still flickered, casting distorted shadows across the table, shadows that stretched long and thin, like the truth we had finally pulled out from underneath years of excuses. My son's hands shook slightly. I shouldn't have let it get this far, he whispered. I sat beside him. Daniel, love blinds even the strongest people. What matters is that you see clearly now. He nodded, but I saw it, the heartbreak in his eyes. A gentle man like him didn't fall out of love in one evening. He wasn't built for sudden endings. He carried love like an anchor, steady and deep, and didn't know how to cut the rope, even when it dragged him under. An hour passed. Then 2. Emily didn't call, didn't text, didn't return. At midnight, the house grew colder, heavier, as if holding its breath. Daniel paced from room to room, occasionally glancing at the window, as if expecting to see headlights in the driveway. She shouldn't be driving like this, he murmured. She was upset. Maybe I should call her. I shook my head. If you call now, you'll reward her behavior. She stormed off to manipulate your emotions. If you chase after her, she learns that chaos brings attention.
He stopped pacing.
I hate that you're right. I know, I said softly. He leaned against the wall, rubbing his temples. She's not like this all the time. She can be sweet, caring, she can be amazing when she wants to be. I met his eyes with calm understanding. Yes, I said, because people like her aren't cruel constantly. They need moments of kindness to keep you hoping for more. Rage controls you, but affection keeps you attached. He looked away, blinking hard. He wasn't crying, not yet, but the pain was swelling inside him like a bruise under the skin. At 12:37 a.m., we finally heard the sound.
A car. Fast.
Aggressive. Pulling into the driveway like it wanted to tear the gravel apart. Daniel stiffened. I straightened in my chair. The engine revved loudly before shutting off. Doors slammed, not one, but 2. Daniel furrowed his brows. Who was she with? Before either of us could guess, the front door burst open with a violent force that made the frame shake. Emily stormed inside, but she wasn't alone. Behind her was a man we'd never seen before.
Tall.
Cold eyes. Muscles tense. Anger simmering just beneath the surface. My heart hammered once, heavy and loud. But I didn't move. Daniel stepped forward immediately. Emily, who is this? Emily's face was flushed, streaked with smeared mascara, her hair tangled from the wind. She pointed at me with a shaking finger. This, she spat, is all because of you. The man behind her crossed his arms, looking around the house with disdain. Daniel moved between them instinctively, forming a protective barrier. Emily, what are you doing? Who is this? This is Tyler, she announced dramatically, as if presenting a savior. Someone who actually listens to me. Someone who doesn't treat me like I'm worth nothing. Daniel's mouth fell open. You brought a stranger into my mother's house? At midnight. Emily smirked, a thin, bitter smile. Why not? You chose her tonight. So I chose someone too. Daniel stared at her, speechless. Tyler stepped forward. Look, man. She's upset. She needed someone she could talk to. Daniel's voice sharpened. In the middle of the night? In my home. Emily folded her arms. If you won't defend me, he will. I watched the scene unfold with a calmness that surprised even me. Emily didn't bring this man here to talk. She brought him to provoke, to intimidate, to escalate. It was the oldest manipulation tactic. If you won't give me attention, I will force you to. Daniel clenched his fists. Emily, this is insane. You don't bring another man into our home just because you're angry. She smiled coldly. This house isn't even your home. It's hers. That was the moment. The one that broke Daniel. Not the money. Not the lies. Not even the coffee. It was that sentence. Because it told him the truth she had hidden deep. She never saw their marriage as a partnership. Only as leverage. Tyler stepped closer, puffing up his chest like a guard dog. Maybe you should treat her better. Daniel turned toward him, eyes darkening. Get out, he said. Tyler raised an eyebrow. Excuse me?
Get out.
His voice echoed through the house, sharp, commanding, unrecognizable. Emily flinched. Tyler laughed a low, cocky sound. Or what? At that moment I stood up. Slowly, calmly, deliberately. Or, I said in a steady voice, I call the police. Both of them froze. Emily's eyes widened. You wouldn't dare. I held her gaze. No anger. No fear. Only certainty. Try me. Tyler took one good look at me, at the calm woman who wasn't bluffing, and he understood. Something in my eyes told him I had endured storms far stronger than him. He muttered under his breath, Let's go, and tugged Emily's arm. She resisted at first. She didn't want to leave. She wanted destruction. But Tyler pulled harder. Come on. And with that, they both stormed out. The house fell silent again. Daniel sank to his knees, not from weakness, but from the weight of everything he had just seen. And I realized, tonight wasn't the storm. It was the warning. The real storm was still coming. When the door slammed behind Emily and Tyler, the house didn't just fall silent, it felt hollow, vacant, like something heavy had been ripped out of the space and left an echo behind. Daniel remained on his knees, breathing hard, as though the scene he had just witnessed cracked open a part of him he didn't even know existed. I placed a hand on his shoulder, not to comfort him, but to anchor him. He felt cold, shaken, disoriented. He looked up at me, eyes shining with disbelief. She brought another man into our home, he whispered. At midnight. To provoke me. To hurt me. To win. He wasn't asking. He wasn't confused. He was finally understanding. Daniel, I said softly, some people don't argue to solve a problem. They argue to destroy. He swallowed hard. Mom, I didn't want to believe she was that kind of person. Love makes us blind, I replied gently. But disrespect makes us see. He let out a trembling breath, rubbing his face with both hands. How did I not see the signs? You saw them, I corrected. But you explained them away. That's what kind-hearted people do. He closed his eyes, the truth hitting him so deeply his shoulders sagged. We sat in the silence for several minutes until Daniel finally stood. He wasn't steady, but he wasn't broken either. Something inside him was transforming, painfully, slowly, but undeniably. I need time to think, he said. I can't sleep here. Every room reminds me of what happened. I understand, I replied. Go to the guest room. Rest. Tomorrow will be clearer. He nodded weakly and walked down the hallway, closing the door behind him. For the first time that night, I allowed myself to breathe deeply. But the breath didn't last long, because at 3:12 a.m., the sound came. A car engine. Slow. Creeping. Parking in the driveway without headlights. My body went still, every instinct sharpening, waking, preparing. I walked to the living room quietly, my bare feet silent on the floor. I peeked through the curtain. It was her car. Emily's. Alone. The engine turned off. The door opened, and she stepped out, but something was different. She didn't walk like someone coming home. She walked like someone approaching a battlefield. Her hair messy, her makeup smeared, her steps unsteady, yet fueled by something raw, rage mixed with desperation. She walked around to the trunk, opened it, and pulled something out. A box. Not large, not heavy, but something she held with too much intensity. I frowned. What was she doing? She shut the trunk quietly, too quietly, and headed toward the front porch. My heart hammered once, then steadied. I didn't panic. I didn't tremble. I simply listened. The footsteps. Slow, deliberate, uncertain. She stopped right outside the door. Then one single knock. Not loud, not timid. A calculated knock. Daniel opened the guest bedroom door down the hallway, startled. Mom? Who's here? Before I could answer, a soft voice came through the door. Daniel, it's me. Her voice was small, trembling, but not from sadness. From instability. I placed a firm hand on his arm. Don't open it, I whispered. He froze. Why? I motioned toward the door. Emily knocked again, longer this time. Daniel, please open the door. I need to talk to you. I need you. I don't have anyone else. Her voice cracked, raw and broken. It was the kind of voice designed to make a man feel guilty. Daniel moved toward the handle. Instinct, habit, remnants of old love pulling him forward. I stepped in front of him. He blinked. Mom, she's crying. Yes, I said calmly, because manipulation always comes back softer when cruelty fails. We stood in silence as Emily rested her forehead against the door. Daniel, I'm scared, she sobbed. I don't know where else to go. Please, let me in. Then her tone changed, the slightest shift. Barely noticeable unless you knew her. And I brought something for your mother. Daniel stiffened. What? A pause. Then, barely above a whisper. A present. My stomach tightened. Daniel, I said, lowering my voice, step back from the door. He hesitated. Then he listened. He stepped away. Emily knocked a third time, sharp. Impatient. Open the door, she demanded. Her tears vanished. Her voice hardened. Open
The door.
Daniel whispered. Mom, what is she holding? I swallowed. I don't know. Then, something hit the door. Not a fist. Not a kick. Something small. Something placed. And then Emily whispered, voice shaky and unhinged. If you won't open, I'll leave it right here. We heard her footsteps leaving the porch. Then the sound of her car door. Then the engine roaring to life. And finally silence. Daniel and I stared at each other, both shaken now. He approached slowly and opened the door. On the porch floor, illuminated by the streetlight, sat a small box, wrapped in dark paper, tied with twine. No note, no message, no explanation, just a box, left by a woman who had already proven she would cross any line. Daniel swallowed hard. Mom, should we open it? I looked at the box. Cold air brushed my skin. No, I said softly. Not tonight. Because in my bones, in the place where instincts speak louder than reason, I felt it. This wasn't an apology. This wasn't a gift. This was a warning. And the storm wasn't coming anymore. It was here. Daniel and I stared at the box lying on the porch floor as though it were alive. It was small, almost deceptively small, wrapped in plain dark paper, tied with twine in a sloppy knot. No tag. No note. No explanation. Just a box that Emily had left behind like a ghost, leaving one final whisper. Daniel exhaled shakily. Mom, do you think it's dangerous? I didn't answer right away. Danger comes in different forms. Not all of them explode or burn. Some wound the mind. Some wound the heart. But the way Emily whispered, I brought something for your mother, still echoed inside me. Always for me. Always aimed at me. Because the strongest manipulator doesn't attack the weakest spot. They attack the strongest presence in the room. I crouched down slowly, examining the box without touching it. Daniel hovered behind me nervously. It's probably nothing, he said, though his voice betrayed him. Maybe it's, I don't know, something from earlier? Maybe a letter? I straightened and looked at him. Emily doesn't give gifts, I said softly. She gives leverage. Daniel closed his eyes, his heart sinking. I don't want to believe she would hurt you. I touched his arm gently. You don't have to believe it tonight, I whispered. You only have to be cautious. He nodded, reluctantly accepting the truth he'd been fighting for too long. We stood in silence, staring at the box, until Daniel finally said, "I'm opening it." "Wait." He froze. I stepped closer. We open it together. Slowly. Daniel swallowed hard. "Okay." We brought the box inside and placed it on the dining table, the same table where the truth had unraveled hours before. The candles were still burning, now melted lower, dripping wax like tears down their sides. The shadows danced again, but this time it felt like they were watching us. Daniel grabbed a pair of scissors, hands trembling. I steadied his wrist. "Slowly," I said. "No sudden movements." He nodded and cut the twine, the sound small yet deafening. Snap. The string fell to the table. Then Daniel peeled away the dark paper. Each fold made the room feel smaller. Beneath it was a plain cardboard box. Unmarked. Silent. He looked at me one last time. "Are you ready?" I nodded, even though I wasn't. No mother is ever ready for the worst version of the woman her son married. Daniel opened the lid. Inside was a folded piece of paper. Just paper. Daniel let out a shaky breath. "Oh, thank God." "Wait," I whispered. Emily didn't leave boxes without purpose. He picked up the paper, unfolded it, and froze. Not because of what was written, but because of what wasn't. It was blank. Completely blank. Daniel frowned. What is this? Is she mocking us? Is this some kind of... Daniel. I interrupted softly. Look closer. He lifted the paper toward the candle. The warm light revealed faint indentations, shadows of letters pressed into the page, without ink. A message written with force, but no pen. Daniel's breath hitched. It's empty. There's nothing here. There's always something, I murmured. I slid the paper gently from his fingers and held it under the flame myself. The indentations became easier to see, a sentence, carved into the fibers by pressure alone. Not written. Etched. Daniel leaned in, eyes widening as the words finally revealed themselves. For words carved with fury. Words that sent a cold shiver down his spine. You haven't won yet. Daniel staggered back from the table as if struck. No, he whispered. No, she's threatening us. I stayed still, motionless, but inside, a storm rose in my chest. Daniel's voice shook. Mom, she's unstable. She's not thinking clearly. I folded the paper slowly, deliberately. This isn't instability, I said. This is intent. Daniel pressed a hand to his forehead, pacing. We need to call someone. The police. A lawyer. Something. We will, I assured him. But not tonight. Tonight we stay calm. We stay aware. And we don't make emotional decisions. He raked a hand through his hair. I don't even know who she is anymore. I met his eyes. Yes, I said softly. You do. You just didn't want to accept it before. Daniel stopped pacing, sat down slowly, put his head in his hands. Mom, I'm scared. I placed the folded message in the center of the table. I know, I said, but fear doesn't guide us. Truth does. Daniel looked up. So, what do we do now? I took a deep breath. The kind of breath women take when they decide they won't be victims anymore. We prepare, I said. And tomorrow we finish this. Because Emily didn't leave us a gift. She left us a promise. And I intended to answer it. I didn't sleep that night. Not a minute. Not a breath. I sat at the dining table with the folded message lying in front of me like a dark omen. You haven't won yet. But the longer I stared at those words, the less power they held. Because winning had never been the goal. Not for me. Not for my son. The goal was something far simpler. Peace. Truth. And finally, freedom. When the first rays of sunlight filtered into the house, Daniel emerged from the guest room, looking exhausted, pale, but determined. Mom, he whispered, I'm done. The words were quiet, but mighty. The kind of words that come from a heart that has finally stopped negotiating with pain. I nodded once. I know. He took a deep breath, his voice trembling but steady. I want to talk to her.
Calmly.
With clarity. Without fighting.
Good, I said.
But not alone. He looked at me gratefully. For the first time in years, he wasn't defensive, guarded, or confused. He was clear. We sat together for breakfast, or rather, we sat together in the presence of food neither of us touched. And just when the clock hit 9:02 a.m., Daniel's phone buzzed. Emily. Calling. Calling again. Calling again. 5 calls in under a minute. She didn't want reconciliation. She wanted access.
Control.
A new angle. Daniel didn't answer. Finally, she sent a text. We need to talk. I'm coming over.
Daniel looked at me.
Should we let her in? He asked. I placed my hand over his. We don't let storms walk through the front door, I said gently. We meet them outside, where they can't destroy the house. He nodded. We stepped onto the porch together, and moments later, Emily's car pulled into the driveway. She stepped out slowly, deliberately, not raging, not frantic this time.
No.
She was composed, collected, rehearsed. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but her posture was straight, her tone calm. Daniel, she said softly, we need to fix this. I love you. She reached for him, but he took a step back. No, he said gently. We need to talk. She froze. Calm voices frightened her more than screaming, because she could manipulate chaos, but she couldn't manipulate clarity. Emily, Daniel continued, last night wasn't just a mistake. It was a breaking point. She opened her mouth, but he lifted a hand. Let me finish. Tears filled her eyes instantly, not remorse, but fear of losing control. You brought another man into our home, he said. You threatened my mother directly or indirectly. You lied to me repeatedly. You stole from her. You hurt her. Emily's voice cracked. I said I was sorry. You're not sorry, Daniel said. You're scared. She flinched. And that's the difference, he continued. Sorry means taking responsibility. Fear means losing power. Emily swallowed hard. So, what, you're ending it? Daniel's voice softened, heartbreakingly soft. I'm choosing peace. The words hit her harder than a slap. I love you, Emily, he said, but I can't stay in a marriage where love is a weapon. Her face twisted in anguish. I can change, she whispered weakly. I can do better. I'll go to therapy. We can start over. Emily, he said gently, you don't need to change for me. You need to change for yourself. Silence.
Pain. Raw.
Undeniable. She looked at me then, not with hatred, not with blame, but with something deeper. Understanding. She realized at last that I had never been her enemy. Her enemy had always been the version of herself she refused to confront. Daniel stepped back. I've already packed your things, he said softly. They're in the car. Emily's knees buckled slightly. She steadied herself on the railing. Daniel, please. He shook his head. I want a wife, he whispered. Not a war. That line stole the last breath of her resistance. Her face crumbled. She covered her mouth. And for the first time, truly, she cried. Not manipulation. Not performance.
Pain.
Deep pain. Daniel walked to her slowly and kissed her forehead, a goodbye sweeter than any apology. I hope you find peace, he whispered. Emily sobbed, but she didn't fight. She didn't scream. She didn't lash out. She simply nodded, defeated, heartbroken, undone. She walked to her car, tears streaming down her face, and slowly drove away. No threats. No last words. No more storms. Just silence. Daniel turned to me, eyes red. I'm sorry, he said. I embraced him, something I hadn't done in years. You have nothing to apologize for, I whispered. You took the hardest step a person can take. What step? He asked. The step toward yourself. We went back inside, and for the first time in a long, long time, the house felt like a home again.
Warm.
Quiet. Safe. I walked to the dining table, looked at Emily's last message, and folded it one final time. And then, with a steady hand, I dropped it into the trash. because she was right about one thing. I hadn't won yet. But I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to reclaim my life. And that I had finally done.